right, so welcome back. Appreciate you guys watching this and the comments and all that stuff. And if you haven't watched the reel that I did before this, do it, because I'm going to piggyback on something. And I just want you all to know it's really hard to. I understand that there's some elephants in the room that need to be addressed with this stuff, and it's really hard to, in a 10-minute video, talk about all the things that need to be addressed. It's not like I'm an idiot and don't understand some of the objections in this. But I want to talk about the myth of authority a little bit and just how stupid and complacent we've become. And I'm not being insulting. I'm not trying to be insulting. I'm an idiot from time to time. If you followed me around and heard my conversations with myself, trust me, I call myself an idiot all the time. But I'm going to give a couple examples of just how stupid we are and what we put up with and why. That it just doesn't make sense. And I'm going to do one as a kind of a moral dilemma, and another one is it's none of your damn business dilemma. So excuse me, but I want to talk about how also much we've been indoctrinated with, and what we don't question, and why we don't question it. And I'm going to give you a biblical reference in terms of during the times of crucifixion, like with Barabbas, right? Barabbas, however you want to pronounce his name. He also has an interesting name and the meaning behind it. But, you know, what you're told since you were young is that the people chose to crucify Christ and chose to chose to release a murderer and a thief, right? Well, did anybody ever question the accusations? Like, who exactly did he murder, right? Who did he steal from? Because the corruption that exists today in our government, it's always been there. And it's hard to say what era was worse than another. But the corruption has always existed. The fraud has always been there. And what if I told you that this man, Barabbas, murdered the pedophiles of the day? You know what I mean? He murdered the Jeffrey Epsteins and stole from those guys. Because, quite honestly, it's hard to really know because there's not much of historical context of the man. But considering what we know and the corruption that was back then and the corruption that exists, I'm going to lean towards 99% that dude probably murdered some of the Roman elites and some of the not so good guys, right, towards humanity. It's just an example as to say, you know, think about it. You're told constantly in church, especially around Easter time, that they chose to release a murderer and a thief, and Christ was crucified instead. It's like, yeah, well, he probably murdered some people that needed to be murdered. So upward and onward to where we are at right now with the stupidity that we have going on. The moral example would be this. Let's say I'm thumbing through the current dating apps, right? Stumble across a woman, end up having a conversation with her. We agree to go out on a date, and so this time comes around Saturday night. I go up and pick her up. We go out, have a good time, go to a fancy restaurant, take in a concert, head to a bar afterwards. And then, you know, at this point in time, I got, let's say, $450 in the night, right? So then we go to her place to drop her off. She said, I had a really good time. Yeah, me too. And she's like, you want to come up? Sure, whatever. We split a bottle of wine, and one thing leads to another. You know, I end up going to bed with her, right? Same exact scenario. Week later. And I roll up to this woman's house to pick her up, and she says, you know, I'm not really feeling it tonight. And I say, oh, that's fine, we can take a rain check or whatever. She's like, no, I still want to spend time with you. I just don't want to go out. Do you care if we order in? Okay, perfect. So she ends up ordering Chinese food. She has a couple bottles of wine there. We watch a movie, have great conversation, you know, doing all this stuff. And then, you know, whatever, it gets late. And she says, you know, it's getting late. And I say, yeah, I got some things to do tomorrow too. And she says, well, do you want to stay the night? Okay, perfect. Because at this point, I got zero money into it, right? And by the way, I know this is crude. It's just an example. But let's face it, this happens every single day, every single night in America, right? These two examples aren't, it's not some hypothetical that's never going to happen. This stuff is happening. And so we end up going to bed, but before we get to her bedroom, she turns around and says, one thing, it's $300 for the night. I'm like, well, whatever. I spent $450 last week, right? Here's the crazy part, right? In one of those scenarios, I broke the law. In another one, I didn't. Like, why are we listening to law enforcement? What business do they have between two consenting adults and what they decide to do with their time? Right? What business is it of governments? The exact same thing played out. So you can't even say it's about safety, right? You can't say it's anything about any of that stuff. You can't say it's about morality, because your legislatures are probably some of the most immoral people in the world. Nothing's changed. It's just some law says that one of them is illegal and the other one's just perfectly acceptable. But let's come a little closer to home with one. Here in Minnesota, I don't know what year it was, 3-4 years ago, recreational use of marijuana was legalized, and I've looked for these numbers and I can't find them. But well, let's rewind this. Let's give a brief history of the corruption that exists in this industry. I believe it was in 1937 the Marijuana Tax Act was passed, which didn't outlaw hemp completely. It made it too cumbersome to even really deal with as far as a crop goes, or growing it or what have you. And the reason that happened is because the PVC industry was becoming, the petrochemical industry was coming to market, the PVCs and plumbing and all that stuff, not to mention the timber industry, and the paper industry didn't really care for it either, because if you don't know much about hemp, I don't know what to say other than it's probably, it's a miracle plant. It's a legume, so it's a nitrogen fixer. It oxygenates the soil. It breaks up heavy compacted clay. You can get 4 times the amount of paper product from an acre of that versus trees, and it's regenerative, and you can make paint and textiles and rope and clothes and hempcrete and all of these things. It's like a multi-use plant that's actually really good for the environment and whatnot. And so we can't, and I'm bringing this up right now because now they want to make hemp illegal again, because of course the CBD is, alleviating a lot of pain for people and reducing inflammation and causing all kinds of positive health benefits. So we can't be having that in America. I mean, for God's sake, getting people healthy, this is crazy. We must do something about it. Let's make it illegal again. And, from a psychoactive standpoint, there's, you can't even compare. It's apples and oranges. It's not even apples and oranges. It's not even fruit. It's like giraffes to fruit comparison between hemp and marijuana. But fast forward to 1970, now the Controlled Substance Act was passed, which made marijuana Schedule 1, which is insane to even classify it as that. And I've tried to put numbers together as far as how much money Minnesota has spent. It's really hard to find. This is a complete 100% guess in terms of a number, and I'm just going to say billions, because it's certainly in the billions. Billions of dollars, if not, honestly, probably hundreds of billions of dollars have been spent on marijuana in Minnesota since 1970, from administrative costs and court proceedings and defense attorneys and prosecuting attorneys, and then the economic cost of job losses and marriages dissolving over it. And of course there's trauma in school with your dad's a pothead, because of course kids are going to find out, right? How many lives were destroyed because of that law? How many billions of dollars were wasted because of that law? Taxpayer, your stolen time, your stolen labor, wasted over this absolutely bullshit law. Because why? Because we all believe in this myth of authority. And then the worst part about it, and I'm kind of glad that Mark started the podcast with a video of Larkin Rose talking about law enforcement, because it's law enforcement that enforces these unconstitutional, immoral laws. Stop it. Just stop it. Just say, I'm not doing this anymore. It's none of our business if what people do. If I want to chop a couple lines up on a Friday night and enjoy myself, that's my business. You know what I mean? But now if I do four or five rails and then go to my neighbor's house and, rob them, then it becomes another problem. Then they have a choice to put two on my chest and one on my head if they want to. But up until that point, it's no one else's business what I do. It's no one else's business what you do. And now magically, right? Magically, a bunch of people got together and decided that, well, with this magic pen, there's magic ink in here, and we can write these magic words down on this magical piece of paper. And then we can magically say that as mommy and daddy, you children now, you can go out and do this drug. You can plant this plant and you can consume the product and fruit of it. You guys, it's mind-blowing. Just stop and think about it. Forget all the, well, they're doing it for safety and whatever else. Just stop all the nonsensical excuses regarding all of this stuff and just understand you don't have a right to tell people what they can and can't do with their body. You know what I mean? On their own time, in their own place. There's a lot of things we need to talk about and discuss in terms of anarchy and getting really to the crux of these issues. And it's not that I don't see them, and it's not that I don't understand the elephants in the room. One of the biggest ones is that, the person with the biggest stick, right, is gonna be on top, because eventually the mob's gonna take over. That's what everybody is scared about. But it's like, yeah, maybe the mob will take over. But I got a pretty big gun too, and I know all my neighbors around here, and they got pretty big guns too. And so I'm thinking that it's probably not going to happen that way, and even if it does, so what? The mob has already took over. They're just sitting in government making rules to rule over you. You know what I mean? They get rich off a $400 or $200 slap on the wrist for insider trading, when if you did it, you'd go to jail. And that's exactly what's going on. Rules for thee, but not for me. And so we really need to start examining this stuff if we really want to have a more brighter future, a more positive future for ourselves and our children and whatnot. We have to examine the myth of authority and where this comes from. And one of those questions, it's all logic based, you guys. One of those questions is, can you convey a right that you don't have yourself? I don't have a right to come rob you, take 50% or 30% of your income, right? So how could I ever give that right away to anybody else? And how can anybody like me say that anyone else has that right? Not unless you believe in the myth of authority. Theft is immoral, is it not? So they have no moral obligation to do. And law enforcement, this is where this comes in again, they don't have an obligation to enforce an immoral law. Period. End of story. And they need to step up to the plate and say, no, this is done. We're done with this. We're done with the corruptness. We're done with the corrupt politicians. And we're not doing this anymore. And by the way, if they did that, the people would stand up for that. 100% they would. They would back the police officers and law enforcement. If law enforcement just stopped enforcing unconstitutional, anti-human right laws, the people would absolutely back them. So it's like they'd have nothing to lose. It's not like they'd lose their job, because we'd be like, no, they're not losing their job. But anyway, there's a lot to talk about. There's a lot to digest. There's a lot to contemplate. But if you watch my reel before this, it all comes down to lines in the sand. And I'm gonna go off about lines in the sand in another video, because that's what all of this is, and what makes your line in the sand right and my line wrong. But till then, hopefully that gave you something to think about, and get pissed off, get angry, stop complying, stop believing in this myth that someone else has a higher right or claim over your property and your body than you. It's a myth. So till next time, peace out. We'll catch up with you guys later. Bye.